I'm Dr. Vanessa Sinclair, and this is Rendering Unconscious. My guest today is Professor Todd McGowan, who teaches theory and film at the University of Vermont. His newest book, Universality and Identity Politics, will be out this July from Columbia University Press. Rendering Unconscious is also a book. Rendering Unconscious, Psychoanalytic Perspectives, Politics, and Poetry. Available from Trapart Books, 2019. Now also available on iBook and Kindle. Please visit our publisher's website, www.trapart.net. You can support the podcast by visiting our Patreon, patreon.com/VANESSA23CARL. Your support is greatly appreciated. Links to everything can be found in the text accompanying this episode.
Hi, Vanessa. Good to see you.
Hi, Todd. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm trying to adjust to the life inside to something, but it's okay. I mean, it's better than dying, which I know people that have. It's a very scary, sad time.
Yeah, for sure. I've actually known 5 people who have passed away now. Some definitely COVID, and some they weren't tested, but probably were COVID.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
It's funny because I was sick at the beginning of the time, and I'm not sure, because I couldn't get a test what it was, but it was very bad. But I have lung problems, so I think if I got it, it would be very dangerous and severe for me. So I don't think that I had it, but
I think a lot of people have had it and didn't realize that that's what it was.
Right. They've done these little tests of different areas, and they're like 100 times or 50 times the number of people that think they're infected have been infected. Right. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I bet.
It's funny. I don't know about there, but here it's such a political divide. That's about this, just regarding the seriousness of it. You would think that an illness would just be what it is, but it's funny how it just has completely mobilized left and right politically in different ways. And I guess, don't you think that there's a way in which natural disasters are inherently favorable to the left, and human-made wars are inherently favorable to the right? And so I almost kind of feel like Trump and the right, they sort of sense that, a natural disaster like a plague is bad for us, because it gives people a sense of the collective, and their whole idea is they only want a collective that's clearly nationalized or ethnic. And I think that the point of a plague or any kind of natural disaster is that it makes a collective that's regardless of borders become apparent.
That's a really good point. Yeah, no, here it's not politicized like that. Like here the politicians who usually don't agree are like, we're all on the same side with this,
So it creates there's a collective sensibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I find it very, I don't know, have you read like Giorgio Agamben and these leftist critiques of the decision to mandate that people stay inside?
No.
So Agamben, because he thinks it's in, and a lot of other thinkers of biopower, biopolitics, their idea is that by forcing people that we're giving in to the power of the state. That's one thing. So it's the authority of the state, which they are against in every form. And the second thing is that that life itself is not worth. How would they say it? That life itself has no inherent worth, And so by valuing life over what Agamben would call our form of life, we're betraying the only thing that makes our life worth living. So he even attacked the Pope for holding mass within when he held mass and nobody came. So Agamben's point, he compared Pope Francis to Saint Francis, and he said Saint Francis went out among the lepers. Pope Francis protects himself from those who are diseased. So I thought I found that risible. I think that's a horrible position. I think what's interesting is that the difference is, of course, that Francis, even if he died by going, like, he didn't kill other people. Whereas if Pope Francis held a mass and everybody came, it wouldn't just kill himself. It could kill, millions of people. So I find that it's interesting that that's the end point of this logic of biopower and fear of biopower. That's what it ends up leading to, that any gesture on the part of the state and any attempt to protect us via the state is anathema. Whereas I kind of feel like this is a time for state power.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is the time when what government is supposed to be is used for.
Right. Here, it's interesting, but there you don't get this so here there's an opposition between right and left, but also between capital and state power. So there's these champions of the capitalist economy. There's even this lunatic lieutenant governor in Texas, I don't know if you've heard of him, named Dan Patrick, who said there are things more important than life. And by that he meant our capitalist
money.
Economy.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Right, exactly. So it's interesting that Agamben and this crazy Republican lieutenant governor kind of they don't like Agamben's not in favor of money necessarily, but their position ends up being the same.
No, I've been thinking about that too, because a lot of kind of really left-wing people that I usually really like, I at this point have like kind of merged with the really, really right, like where they're both against the thing for different reasons but having the same kind of outcome. And I've actually had to like tell people that I like those people as well, like, this is a time where you cannot listen, or this like push to say like, oh, it's getting all blown out of proportion and this is like more of a conspiracy than it needs to be. And it's like, actually it's being really underreported clearly. So
yeah.
Let's not say that, please.
Such a great point by you. I think that's exactly right. I think it's not overdone, it's underdone. Across the planet, I think it's being undersold.
Exactly.
And I think, I totally agree with you. I usually don't like that idea that left and right somehow meet. But this event is showing that to be actually really true. We're actually seeing it happen live right before our eyes. This, like, I have two also leftist friends who sound like these. My mom has a group of lunatic conservative friends that from when she lived in Ohio, and they're all like, they all think, I know I'm from Ohio, so I know it's, but they've actually, it's funny, Ohio has a Republican governor who's one of the few that's done a really good job. He's like shut everything down. And so for the first time, I don't feel totally ashamed about being from Ohio, but my, her friend, what I'm saying is her friends they're all like, they're just denying it. They're like, not only do they think it's overdone, they think it's just a complete hoax. And she finally said, I can't even talk to you. Like, I just can't, if you don't believe in this, we can't even have a conversation.
Yeah, no, this is science. That's the thing. Like you're saying, like, how are they arguing this? But as people pointed out as well, like, the same people that are denying this are the climate change deniers. And clearly, like, all of this is really happening and it's science and we need to, like, deal with it as if it's real, because it is.
Yeah, I think it's a great point that the coincidence of the people denying this and the people denying climate change, and the way in which I've heard people say this, I think this is right, that this is a kind of preliminary run for the disaster of climate change as it's going to come. And I think that's probably true.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is part of it. This is one of the things they said would happen. There would be more diseases as the earth gets warmer, and it's all happening.
Right. And as we encroach on every other part of the planet, right? I think that's part of what they think probably originated the disease, is that we were going into areas that were previously not gone into, and then then all of a sudden we're in contact with animals that, we wouldn't otherwise be in contact with.
Right. We need to leave some parts of the earth natural.
Yeah, just a few, like
just a little bit.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
It's kind of horrifying that we've covered as much as we have, actually.
I know. It's like we've only left the desert alone,
Speaking of being ashamed of where you're from, I had to go to Episcopalian school when I was young, and we were actually taught that like the Earth was like 5,000 or 6,000 years old, like in school.
Wow.
What do you think about this? Like, why are people allowed to teach children that? Because I actually believed that, and I had to learn it when I got older, like when I was a teenager. But until I was a teenager, I thought that. That's not okay.
Vanessa, what was the thesis about carbon dating and stuff that was?
They just didn't teach us that.
Oh, okay. So they just avoided it.
They just left it out.
Okay.
Just like they left out world history and only taught us like 200 years of American history over and over and over and over, which they left a lot of that out also.
Right. Like slavery, civil rights movement, right? Interesting. I actually, what do you think about? I'm against private schooling. I have to say, I'm against homeschooling. I feel like that's a function. We just talked about the things that the state can do. It seems like to me, schooling is something the state can do and should do. And I've always found everybody that I know, I shouldn't say this, I know one person that was homeschooled and they're really leftist and smart and it was great. But basically all the people that I know that were homeschooled or private schooled, they have to overcome this initial like skewing of their entire perspective. I mean, I don't want to apotheosize public schooling, but I do think there's really something to be said for public schooling and not letting people into, this kind of like wild, it's just a kind of paranoid position where you're not even ready to meet the world when you have this idea that the world is 4,000 years old or something, And I think it's interesting that they didn't even broach the idea of of fossils, because I like this. Do you know this thesis that God actually put the fossils there to trick us into
people? Yeah, they told us that, actually.
Oh, you got that? Okay.
Yeah, we did. I had forgot. I've blocked a lot of it out.
Yeah. It's funny because I grew up in a really fundamentalist home, and so that was I don't think we got this stuff about the Earth's age. I think that wasn't their concern. Although we did, I think they would go. They get the age from going through the different generations in the Bible, right? Like that's how they calculate it. Is that right? Yeah.
It's like 6,000 years.
Right.
And I
from
actually believed that till I was a teenager. And then when I went from private to public school all of a sudden, it was like, what is going on? It was a shock.
Was it just
a whole lot of world that I didn't know about.
Was it just in science that there was a shock, or were there other areas where it was also?
Well, we had to go to church every day. So like we woke up, went to school, all met in the center courtyard, praised the flag, right? Pledged the flag, whatever.
Right.
And then went to church every day before we went to classes. And then during our school day, like twice a week, we also had Bible study on top of church. And we all like worked in the church. Like I was like a choir girl and did all the altar things and like helped the priest put his robes on and read the Bible in front of the school. It's like, it was a real inundation.
Wow. Do you still have a really good biblical knowledge?
I would say so. Yeah.
See, that's a benefit then, right?
I guess.
Yeah. No, I think it's a benefit. I mean, that's
actually, in my writing, I actually am like adamant that I will not write anything about it. Like, I just don't want it in my work.
Oh, so you won't use it as a reference for some example or anything?
No, I want it out.
Oh, yeah. I felt that way. Yeah, that's interesting. I felt that way for a long time, and now I've shifted back in some way. Like I'm just less hostile. I used to feel pretty hostile, and now I'm just kind of adjusted.
I think it's coming up. I think I was more hostile, and then I kind of got over it, and then I think it's because I've moved, and I see like how just growing up in America in general is like such an inundation into all this propaganda, American being number one, and all of human civilization has led up to this point where this country was formed. Maybe that was because I was in this Christian school too. I don't know, but that's what they taught us as well.
I think everybody I think that you even get that in a public school. Yeah, but I find it fascinating the way religion and nationalism come together so often in America, right? Like it's almost like the private schools are more nationalistic than the public schools, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I wonder too, because I've been thinking also a lot about this, probably because I've left, is because that like in Sweden they have like such a cultural history with like all of their old myths and their old religion, and like everybody just knows it and it's just like part of the culture. And I feel like the people that were native to America, their mythology and their history and religion was not integrated. They were just like massacred and put off to the side on these reservations. So there's no like, there feels like there's no grounding to the culture as far like in history, or I don't know. So maybe that's why people are so like nationalistic and like holding on so tight to things that aren't that historical or deep.
I think that's right. I think it's right, and I think that the only ground for culture is Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't seem like, clearly to religious people that doesn't seem like a ground at all. But I think that's right, that there's this lack of a past, like a rootedness. I think it creates a kind of inferiority complex among Americans, and then they try to overcome it with this rabid patriotism.
Exactly. And superhero, maybe the superhero movies have like created a mythology with the comic books and everything. That's like the mythology that we have is like through this like kind of modern myth making.
Yeah, don't you think it's interesting though how those are, I don't know about the movies, but at least the comic books themselves are so male driven, right? Like I don't think that's a shared space. In fact, I've never met I've had tons of students that come in and are just like want to write their thesis on comic books, but never one woman has wanted to. So it's an interesting discrepancy, I think. About the films, I don't know. Maybe it's more mixed, but I think, and also because some of these superheroes have been focused on women
very recently.
Right, just recently, right. But I don't know. But so that can't. It could maybe form a collective mythology, but then I think it's not fully collective. It's like it's so.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah. But it's also such an infantile kind of mythology. I think. I don't know. I feel like they're okay. I go to see them all, but these superhero things I find a little. I think they're a little problematic, just because of what they're. I feel like they're our contemporary version of the Western. Like they're the Western hero who's not subjected to who's a figure of exception, right? Who's not subject to the law and writes the things that the law can't write. So I feel like that just our reliance on that figure is still like a reliance on a John Wayne-like figure, a figure of non-castration. Clearest in the case of Superman, right? Like he's totally non-castration because he can't even be hurt except for this crazy stuff, kryptonite.
No, this is totally true, and I've been thinking about this as well, about like the Western mythology and how ingrained that is in America, and how like you can see it everywhere. Like clearly we're all in quarantine right now, and so people are watching a lot of Netflix, like trying to find something to watch. It's like everything's like the good guy and the bad guy, and the good guy that's kind of an outlaw, but he's still he's still the good guy, and everything's like still like cops and robbers, or like westerns, or like the DEA versus the cartel. It's like over and over and over again. It's like, do you guys have another story?
Well, I wonder if it, because the plague breaks down the us versus them possibility, because it creates, I would claim, this kind of collective. I wonder if like people are flocking to, and Hollywood is producing even more of these us versus them kind of scenarios. It seems like that fits in the era as it gives you respite from the collective. I think that there's something traumatic about the collective, right? Like there's something, because it doesn't give you the security of the enemy. And I feel like that enemy, the notion of that friend enemy distinction that Carl Schmitt talks about, I feel like that's such an ideological distinction, but it's yet one I think people rely on psychically as a way to kind of orient themselves.
Yeah, but Hollywood's not making anything right now. It's all shut down.
That's true. So it's not being made in response to this. That's right. That's right. So it's that people are drawn to it because Hollywood. You're right. They made it. They made it a while ago, and they're not doing anything now. And all their programming decisions were already made. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good point. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that. This idea of the Western and that Western hero, I feel like that, to me, that's a supplement of the friend enemy us them distinction, and yet it's crucial to it. So we have to believe in that one figure that can say I think he's this figure of salvation, right? Like he can't be, just like you said, like that, like if it's a DEA agent, it's one that doesn't necessarily play by all the rules, like usually he does what has to be done in order to solve the problem, right?
Like so it's
yeah.
Are you watching Westworld?
I have not. No, we're actually watching The Good Place right now for some reason. It's fine. I mean, I have two twin boys. They're 16, and we just got through this great show, Veronica Mars, and so the star of it, Kristen Bell, is also in Good Place, so we shifted to that. But my one son has actually watched all of Westworld, and he loves it. So I think I should probably.
It's pretty good, I must say. It's probably the best thing going right now. Did you watch the Freud show?
No, because people warned me off of it. They said it was really bad.
It's campy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought it was fun.
You didn't think it was a parody of him, like the cocaine and stuff, or?
Oh, maybe a little bit. I talked to this woman, Mary Wild, about it, who talks about film and Freud at the Freud Museum, and she described it as fan fiction, and I thought that was nice because it's like it's a little. I mean, it's over the top, but also like they're making it for Netflix, so it's not going to be like high art Freudian theory, you know what I mean? So they yeah, I mean, yeah.
Okay, I'll have to watch it.
I was ambivalent about it in parts. I'm like, oh, Freud wouldn't do that, but at the end of the day, I feel like if it gets like the general public, like the Netflix level public, to like think about Freud for a few hours, that makes me happy,
Yeah, no, me too, but I guess I had the wrong impression. Like people told me that it was meant as a parody to turn people off of Freud, but that's wrong.
No, because I actually talked to the people who made it and read interviews with them, and they love Freud. So they didn't mean to turn people off of Freud. But I mean, there is like a blood orgy in it. So it's like it goes there. He's not in it though.
He's not in it. I was going to say.
No. He's in love with he's drawn to a hysteric who's a psychic who gets possessed by a demon.
So it really is like it's supernatural kind of.
Yeah, exactly. It's occult Freud murder mystery.
Okay.
It's an occult Freud murder mystery. Yeah.
I'm definitely watching it now, though. So.
I mean, you just have to see it.
Okay. It's like it's kind of like he's Buffy the Vampire Slayer or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he gets drawn into it. He's treating hysterics, and then once this woman's a psychic, and he's hypnotizing everyone, and he kind of falls in love with them, and she's possessed by demons, so he has to like follow the thread.
That's pretty cool. Is he married yet?
No, it's pre-married Freud.
Okay.
Yeah, it's worth watching.
Okay, definitely.
Danny Novus would disagree. I talked to Danny Novus like when I had just seen the first episode or had just started watching it, and he hadn't watched it yet, and then he tried to watch it, and he was like, Vanessa.
Oh, he couldn't watch it?
And I was like, skip to episode 4, and so he did. I don't know. I'll talk to him again and see what happened.
Okay.
It's really camp.
Okay. He should have been like the script consultant or something.
Yeah, I know. That's what I said. I told them I can consult for them anytime. Yeah. And we also said maybe they should make a Lacan one, but they actually told me today that they're making one of Deleuze and Guattari. So they're making fan fiction about. Another thing he said that was really interesting was that he said that they wrote it in the time where, like, in Freud's biography, there was like a period where he like burned all of his papers and didn't want anyone to know anything about what was going on in his life at that time, and he wrote that to Martha. The biographers were gonna have to just like make up what their hero had done during that period. So they were like, well, this is what we just thought of, that maybe this is what he did. And that made me love it even more. Like,
so it's like they take the gap in the life and then they fill it in, right?
Yeah, with some surreal, fantastic stuff.
Yeah,
They were like, could have happened. Why not?
Yeah, I think it sounds pretty good actually. And yeah. I don't know why I got steered wrong on that.
Well, I think if you like to take yourself seriously, you're not gonna like it. You know, it's not serious.
Yeah, that's not me. I mean, I so I don't understand. Someone really like. I think they got really upset by the cocaine thing, and that because
it was a little overboard.
A lot of our the students that hate Freud, they bring up cocaine. That's their big thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I think the student that told me not to watch it was kind of triggered by the cocaine or something.
But lots of people did cocaine back then. It wasn't like an illegal, illicit substance like it is now.
Right. It also wasn't illegal even.
Exactly.
Right.
So he wrote a lot of papers. Oh, well. Danny also told me that there was a book and movie called The 7% Solution that did something similar, where they had Sherlock Holmes and Freud, who both took the 7% solution of cocaine, and they did murder mysteries together. Have you seen this?
Right. Yeah, a long time ago. But yeah, that's good.
I'm going to have to check that out now.
Yeah.
Anything else film related you want to talk about?
I don't know. I never saw even the Freud movie that John Huston did. So I'm not good about talking about Freud movies.
What about other movies?
Other movies, sure. I just, did you see this new Invisible Man?
No.
That was the last thing I saw at the theater before the theaters all closed, which for me is the saddest thing. Like I miss so much going to the movies, and I wonder if I think it's going to be a long time before we're able to go to the movies again, because that seems like one of the more dangerous activities.
Yeah, it's enclosed and sitting right next to each other.
Yeah, you're eating the popcorn, and it's like you touch the thing, and it's like, yeah. So I think that's a problem. But no, Invisible Man's pretty good. It's do you ever see the old one with Claude Rains as the Invisible Man? Yeah, it's a great movie. It's one of the best horror movies, I think. It's early talkie, so the effects are really not great, but they solve that by just not showing him, so that's what they do. But in this one, it's from the opposite perspective. So Elizabeth Moss plays a woman whose husband invents invisibility and then tortures her, and she escapes from him, and then the whole movie's about him trying to torture her. So it's about the abuse of women and invisibility as a tool in that abuse. And then and of course you might imagine she ends up turning the tables on him. And
she's so good.
She's great. Yeah.
She's always good in everything.
I know. I obviously, like most people, I first saw her in Mad Men, which I think was she was really, her and Draper, their relationship made that series to me. And then, and then other, like Handmaid's Tale and other stuff she's in.
Yeah, we're watching Handmaid's Tale right now because it came out in 2016, and I was trying to watch it then, and it was like too real. So now I'm like, okay, let's watch it. Now I think I can maybe handle it.
Yeah,
we just finished the first season. I actually first saw her in a play on Broadway. She was in this play called Speed the Plow with Jeremy Piven.
David Mamet play.
Yeah. It was really, really good, and it was like she was on stage like the entire 90 minutes, and she was just amazing. But I didn't know who she was at the time, and then when I saw her in Mad Men, I was like, oh, that's the woman I saw in this play.
I know. I think she's really good, except she's like Tom Cruise. She's What's the Ron Hubbard thing? What's it
The
called?
S word.
Yes.
Scientology.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is Beck, and I really like Beck's music. His second to last album was so good.
Yeah, I think this is the case of, like, separating the artist from the art, right? You kind of have to do it.
But you can't. They are all of these things.
I know, but you don't think that the artwork has a little independence?
It's probably the best part of them.
I like that way of thinking, but you don't think that that because of the formal demands of art that something comes out that sort of violates who you are and
for sure. And it's more like your unconscious coming through instead of this ego thing you've created.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So it's maybe more accurate of their subjectivity.
Yeah, yeah. But you don't. So do you intentionally not watch or read things by people that you know are detestable?
No.
You don't care.
I don't think anything should be censored.
Yeah, but I don't think so either. But you can censor you could prohibit yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't do that.
You don't do that. Yeah.
No. If there's something detestable like in their work and it's turning me off, like say classic Woody Allen, for example.
Right.
Early Woody Allen, love. But like recent, like the Wonder Wheel, I love the Coney Island thing. I love seeing Coney Island like in the olden days. But like it's just like him like spitting his whole pathology at us. Like I am this young, like he's Justin Timberlake and like should be with Kate Winslet, but then goes for the stepdaughter, and it's just like ew, I cannot. Like please stop.
Yeah,
I can't watch him anymore.
Yeah, so because the pathology is too evident in the work.
Yeah, exactly, and that's disgusting.
I agree with that, but I don't think he's made a good film since the early 90s, actually.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I kept watching and watching, waiting to have...
Hoping, yeah.
I want to return to, like, Crimes and Misdemeanors, which I think still is just really great. And I think even something like Manhattan Murder Mystery
is
really...
Yeah, we rewatched that recently. Manhattan Murder Mystery was so good. And that's, like, really neurotic, but in a different way. Like, in the good New York neurotic way.
Right. I think that has to be one of the like 5 funniest films ever made. It's really, and it manages to integrate Lady from Shanghai, this great scene from Lady from Shanghai, and it manages to have a nice little murder mystery going on, and then it's incredibly comic at the same time. So it's and also like it's almost the story of the, I don't know, is it the destruction of his marriage, or at least the ripping apart of it and then the coming together of it, right? So all that stuff is wrapped into one. It's pretty great, but nothing in everything I think that was the last one where he was really like hit it, and then the rest just kind of.
Maybe because he indulged in the thing he should not have, and then it ruined his art.
Yeah. So he got his fantasy object.
Yeah, you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to get your fantasy object.
Yeah, I know.
Don't touch it or her.
I think that has to be right, because that's the film that he was making when he, Mia Farrow started out in that film.
Oh, and really?
Yeah. So the Diane Keaton just came mid-shooting and replaced Mia Farrow because they had this, terrible breakup. And so that's the last film where he was really not, he was sort of entering into that territory where he had his fantasy object. And then after that, it's just a total collapse. I think you're right. Like, I think there's really something about the artist and the alienation from that's true for everyone, right? Like, no one should have their fantasy object, but it's especially true, I think, for the artist when obviously they believe they've realized their fantasy. They haven't, of course, but the fact that he believes it, I think, has been very detrimental to his art.
Yeah, he should have just stayed in the suffering of his neurosis.
Yeah.
And we would have all had much better film experiences.
I know, which is what's important. If he really it's really true. It's probably true even personally. Right? Like, I think life with believing that you've achieved your fantasy is pretty horrible.
Yeah, gross.
Yeah.
What do you do then?
I know. You just sit around and go,
put it on everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So you try. Well, I wonder, do you have a theory about why that makes the art bad?
Do I have a theory about why it makes the art bad? I don't know, it just does. You need your symptom to be able to make your work. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, that's why I asked, because I nothing. I mean, I like that idea. You need your symptom. I mean, and that you're producing the art out of your own trauma, right? Like art has this intricate relation to trauma, and if go ahead.
It reminded me of like the American problem that we talked about in the beginning, where you're like over asserting yourself. It's like maybe because he thinks he has the fantasy object and he's achieved it, but he really doesn't, that he has to like over assert himself over and over and over and over again and like make sure everybody knows that.
I think that's a good theory, actually. I think that's right, that the overcompensation enters into the art. And I mean, art has to emanate out of something that you're lacking. And if you feel like you're not lacking anymore, then you're right. All you can do is like shove your thing on everybody else, which is what happens. I think it's interesting that you said I feel yucky or something. I mean, I think that's what we're responding to in the later Woody Allen films.
Yeah, it's gross. I actually saw the Wonder Wheel in the theater, and it was only because I was in Florida with my mom, and like, what do I do with my mom? I take her to the movies, and
right.
Like there was nothing else. It was like summer superhero. I was like, take her to see this Woody Allen, and like I was like squirming. I was like, please get me out of this theater. It's like it was so beautifully shot with like the Coney Island scene, but like the story was just like so gross. I just wanted to run.
Yeah.
It's like
I mean,
get
I
me
think
out of this.
He still has the ability to shoot. Like there's still some nice looking shots and occasional scenes that are really good, but it's the narrative that now.
Yeah, the narrative sucked.
Yeah.
It was good because Kate Winslet is good. Justin Timberlake's a good actor, and like it was a good well shot scenery. He does it like in these like 1-2 takes, so people aren't like overacting, and I appreciate all of that. But yeah, there's no story. There's no story left. Maybe that's also why, because he's not like, he's just has it now. He's not like searching for anything or like moving towards anything.
Right. I think that's like, is it narrative driven by the lack of the object, right? Like, so if you already feel like you have it, then you can't even construct a narrative, I think.
Yeah, and he doesn't. He just like told his gross story again, and it was like, hey, we know, we know, and nothing could be done about it because it's not technically illegal or whatever. So everyone just has to accept this. This is what you do.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, it's an interesting case study in an artist's total disintegration as an artist, right? Like, I mean, it's almost, I'm trying to think, can you think of an equal to that? Like someone else who, I mean, maybe, I guess the American example would be Faulkner, right? Like maybe someone at this incredible high level, and then they just fall off a cliff. I think, or maybe Hemingway.
Maybe Ezra Pound.
Maybe Pound, right? Maybe there's too many. Maybe there's a lot of it.
There's a lot. And I think also, I feel like every musician that I really, really like, and then they like make it like really big time, and then it's just like not really good anymore. It's like they're not like driven towards anything. They just like have money. They just have everything, and they're just making it because they have a contract or whatever.
Right.
It's not like
right.
there's no more like ambition in it.
Right. So it's best if success comes very late at the end of your life.
Maybe not. Maybe not for them.
Right. I think you're right. Like, personally, I think it's worse. But, you know, like Immanuel Kant wrote the first Critique when he was almost 60 years old. So that was his first real success.
Wow.
And I've always thought, that's pretty good. Like, then you don't have to worry. You don't have your whole life of being this famous guy. You know, like Orson Welles was famous since he was 19 years old, and that was just, it was like this burden that he carried along with him all the time. And he's an interesting case because his falling off has nothing, I think, to do with himself. It just has to do with the fact that other people refused, like they punished him for the greatness of his early art. Hollywood did, I think. I mean, it's about.
It seemed like envy.
Right. I think that's right. I think it's right. I think it's the envy and also the fear, because I feel like Citizen Kane is a real like dagger against American society and American capitalism. And I feel like that they're like, wait a minute, we can't let this guy have any more money or else he's going to keep making films like this. And his second one, Magnificent Ambersons, 45 minutes of it was just destroyed by the studio executive. So that could be, and now it's not a great film because the ending is terrible. But it's just because there is no ending, and it was just made up. Roosevelt asked Wells to go to South America to help relations with South American countries in the U.S. and he went, and then the RKO who had the film, the studio executive said just cut 40 minutes off of it. They just cut it, and then they released it, and Wells had no control, even though he was supposedly had final cut of it. And that was just the first one. And then there are subsequent times where he had a certain vision, and they're like, we don't want it. We don't want that. So it seems like you're always going to follow one of these paths. Like it's either a Woody Allen path or the Orson Welles one. It seems hard to sustain a long career of great art.
The business of Hollywood and their censorship makes me so sad sometimes when I think about it. Like how many amazing films should exist that don't.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's just really sad. I mean, it's a very rare filmmaker that can navigate that system and still come out with something that they want to do, I think.
Yeah, I bet. Did you see this last Orson Welles that they put on Netflix with the Other Side of the Wind? And
yeah,
I forget what the other part of it was called, but they made like the final movie and then the documentary about making the final movie.
Yeah, did you watch it?
Yeah. What did you think?
I think that whoever put that film together should never be allowed to put another film together. I thought it was just, I refuse to think that film's associated with Orson Welles, because I don't have many heroes, but like Orson Welles is one of my heroes, and I just can't abide that was something he would have ever done. So I'm sorry. I hope you didn't really love it.
No. Okay. I thought it was interesting.
Okay. It was interesting. The guy, who put it together is Peter Bogdanovich, who did Last Picture Show? That 70s film? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, I thought it was interesting that they tried to put it together, but I don't think that's what it would have been like if he put it together.
Yeah. I just thought it just didn't hold. Like his films always hold together, I think, even when they've been cut up by the studio. And that film didn't hold together in any way. Like it wasn't clear what it was. Like I'm not sure what it was trying to even say.
Yeah.
Which is maybe why he didn't finish it. Maybe he started to make it and just was like, look, I lost the thread of what I was trying to do, and so I can't put it together.
Yeah, maybe sometimes you should just leave things alone.
Yeah, even though you shoot all that. I mean, with film, it's so sad because you shoot all that footage, you've used all that money, and just sometimes it just doesn't work, I think.
So maybe that's why they made the making of it, to try to explain it.
Right. I thought that was really interesting. I thought the documentary was really, really good. I mean, I almost can watch anything about him, and I just think it's great. Like just a little like there's all these interviews with him and Dick Cavett that are on YouTube, and they're just phenomenal. Like he tells all these little stories about one time he met Churchill, one time he was seated at a dinner. He's a little boy, he went into Europe when he was a young kid. And one time he was traveling through Europe and he got seated at a dinner next to Hitler. Wow. So it's just amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. Like Hitler and Wells were sitting. It's all this kind of like, and there are tons of stories like this that he tells, and he's just such a great storyteller too.
Yeah, he's amazing. He can't be topped.
Yeah, I agree. Marlene Dietrich has my favorite line ever about someone. She said, "Do you know this line?" She says about him. Okay, she says, "When I see him and talk to him, I feel like a plant that has been watered." And I thought that was just the greatest, nicest thing you could say about someone.
That's really true.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that when I watch his films. We're holding out. Our sons haven't yet seen Citizen Kane, so we're waiting for exactly the right age when they'll be like. The problem is we've built it up so. You know how when you have a film build up to you, it's always disappointing because it can never be as good.
That one can't disappoint, though.
I guess you're right. You're right. They already know it's a sled, so so it's not suspenseful for them. But I don't think that's a film where knowing that doesn't hurt anything.
No, it's the experience of the film.
Yeah, yeah. And the fact that that it circles around, it's just like what we're talking about, like it circles around on a subject and then it doesn't get the object, which is what...
It's good. That's when it's good. You're not supposed to get the object.
I know. I agree totally. Yeah, yeah.
We should make sure we talk about your new book.
Okay.
Universality and Identity Politics.
Yeah, yeah. So it'll be out in July. So basically the idea is... So it's it's a defense of universality in a world of identity politics. So that's the one thing, and so I think the main thing that's original about it is that, if I can say that about my own book, is that it thinks of the divide between right and left as the divide between particularity and universality, and so I look at the way that happens, especially through Nazism, and the way Nazism was totally allergic to any universality, and it's pretty fascinating when I read through like Mein Kampf and all this what other main Nazis wrote, and I found that pretty fascinating. And then I try to theorize universality as located through absence, rather like through what's missing, and that's the thing that bonds us together through this shared thing that we don't have, and so it's tied to what we've been talking about the whole time. But I see that as the basis for universality, and thus I think it's a way of obviating some of these critiques of the universal that have been leveled by so many theorists of the 20th century. You know, Foucault, Deleuze, Derrida, they're all kind of, Foucault mainly more than the others, is very critical of universality. And I think that idea seeped into the at least popular academic world, and I think maybe popular world as well. And so part of what I'm trying to do is rehabilitate universality by grounding it in what we don't have rather than what we have.
Nice. I have been looking forward to this book since the last time we talked.
I know. I've been. It's been rested. It's taken a while for it to come through. The problem is that I had it finished, and then I didn't know what to do because my book on Hegel wasn't even out yet, and I'm like, can I talk to my editor at Columbia and say, hey, do you want to look at another book? My other one's not even out yet. Do you want to? And so I'm like, I shouldn't do it. So I waited till the Hegel book came out, and then I said to her, I'm sure you don't want to do it. And then she's like, no, send it to me. We'll do it. Of
course they want to do it.
So that was like, I know. She was very nice. She said, anything you write, we'll look at. So that was nice. But I think I'm pushing it again because I already finished another one, and that one isn't out yet. So I'm gonna try to hold back on this. It's very hard for me.
What is the new one about?
This one's called The Racist Fantasy. So it tries to theorize racism as a product not of power, but of fantasy and the enjoyment that fantasy brings. So, I think from a psychoanalytic standpoint, I think it may seem obvious, but it's, I don't know. So I traced that through different things and how that fantasy works out and how we might combat it, that kind of thing.
I don't think that anything that you've written I would ever describe as obvious.
That's very nice, Vanessa.
It's very true. I think you write very clearly about really complicated things and make them seem like, oh yeah, of course. But that doesn't mean it was obvious.
Well, that's very nice. I don't know. I'm afraid it's obvious. I'm afraid maybe I haven't been obvious up till now. Just getting ready for this one really obvious point. I don't know. Maybe not. I mean, and I worry. I don't know. I'm not worried about it. I'm happy about it. So I'm not gonna engage in some kind of Thank you for saying that. That was very nice.
Don't you want to suffer? Is your
I know
neurosis
I am
coming up?
suffering. I'm suffering from. I suffer every compliment. It make me very. I don't know. It's tied to what I was. Like I grew up like you. I grew up with this very religious background, and so I don't know. Self-flagellation is much more comfortable for me than having to endure someone saying some kind of compliment. So.
Yes, I understand that.
I think it's tied to that religious. I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just.
I think so.
You think it is? Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I'm sure it is.
I think that's the
Although
problem with. I
yeah,
can only speak to Christianity, but I think that's the problem with Christian fundamentalism is that it takes something that people so commonly do to themselves anyway, and then it like uses that to manipulate people. So it like makes it even more severe than you would have been kind of if you were just regularly neurotic.
I think that's right. Do you think do you think it's super egoic?
Yeah, for sure.
You do. Okay. And you think that do you think that Judaism is less super egoic than Christianity because the law is external?
I guess so. I don't know. Like I said, I feel like I can't speak to anything else because the only thing I really know is this Christian fundamentalism. And I went to Episcopalian school, which is not that fundamental because they don't like we take the Eucharist, but you don't like have to go to confession, for example. Right. But my mom is from Alabama, and so her family is like really Christian.
Right.
And so they like talk in tongues and like at dinner just talk about Jesus the whole time and how he saved you and how you should be thankful for like 45 minutes, and it's like, do you have anything else to say ever? And they don't.
That's a sad dinner, I think.
Yeah, for like my entire life it's like, do you have anything to say that is your own thought? There's no own thoughts. It's just all like this regurgitated spiel about Jesus saving us, and we're all so lucky.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough to.
It is sad.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny how that has gotten that's gotten so politically mobilized in America. And I don't know. When I grew up, I don't feel like it had that same kind of political valence to it. Like I mean, my parents were conservative politically, but there wasn't a tie between the religious belief and the political conviction. If anything, I think my dad felt like his religion was pushing him to the left, and he was going to try to, because he believed in the American ideal, that he was going to keep himself on the right. But he felt because of, like compassion for the other or whatever, like that was pushing him in a leftward direction. But I think that's not at all true anymore. Like that evangelical Christianity is so tied up with this political conservatism, but I don't understand. I mean, the notion of the relation love for the other, it's so disappeared from that whole equation, right? I mean, that's to me the saddest thing in this last 50 years of American Christianity.
Totally. I mean, if Jesus existed, this is definitely not what he had in mind. I can say that.
Right. Well, no, it's
for
perfectly
sure.
Yeah.
But I think their only real like entryway is through the pro-choice or pro-life or whatever they call it. So I think that's the only thing they get everybody based on that, on abortion. It's like can't do that, and then that's it. They just don't listen to anything else. They've just like hooked onto that one thing.
Right. So if you buy that, then nothing else. I mean, you love the unborn. Everything else doesn't have to be loved, right?
Apparently.
I mean, it's amazing.
You gotta have babies so that you can send them to war.
Well, that's the question. Like, how can war be, from that perspective, be justified? How can the attitude toward the immigrant that it just seems like such a betrayal of the Christian idea. I mean, this is part of my book on Hegel. I do a long thing about Hegel's Christianity, and I feel like, and that kind of reconciled me to Christianity. I was writing that book that I felt like I kind of am Christian, actually. And that my boys got so upset with me because they're like, you don't mean by that what anybody else means by that, so you have to stop saying that. And I'm like, well, okay. But don't you feel like that there's a real emancipatory kernel in the Christian idea, and it's just so betrayed by all of its manifestations?
Yeah, absolutely. And I had to wrestle with that when I was younger for a long time, because I felt like, well, even if everybody else is not doing this the way I think it should be done, like this like nice helping people care for the other way, and they're all being like really bigoted, then like that made me for a while feel like I had to like really hold on to it, because like somebody has to be like a good Christian, you know?
Yeah, yeah. But then you gave that up.
Yeah, I had to, because it's just too far gone.
Yeah. That's probably true. It's probably too much. The territory is probably too much lost, right? Like
it's the group. It's the problem with groups. Big groups, little groups. Groups are a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when you want the group to all think the same. It's a problem.
Yeah. Well, that's almost inherent in a group, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's hard to have a group where you prize those who go their own way, right? Like, what would that even look like?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would look like Unbehagen, which is like,
there you
does
go.
it exist?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does.
Well, isn't that
Sometimes
true
it doesn't.
Don't you think, Vanessa, it's true of, like, it's why all these psychoanalytic groups all disband all the time? Because, you know, like, they're committed to that idea of the antagonism, and the individual can go their own way, and then there's no group cohesion, or whatever cohesion they have it's very contingent.
Exactly, and that's why things, when they get too solidified, they're not really psychoanalytic anymore. They just like get too dogmatic.
Right, right. So there's something about the psychoanalytic project that's anti-organization, anti-group.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think being too dogmatic or hierarchical is antithetical to psychoanalytic practice, if psychoanalysis is doing its job.
No, I agree. Just because if the big other doesn't exist, then there can't be a hierarchy. Like, no hierarchy can be invalidated or justified. Right. But the problem is, of course, if you don't have a hierarchy, then the stupidest comments can win the day, you know, like they can. So there is a kind of contradiction, or like a tension, I think.
Yeah. But I think somebody, who was it? It was actually Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins. He actually saw a talk that I gave with a friend of mine, Caitlin Foisey, and we were talking about the cut-up method, and like having to break down narratives, and there's too many rigid narratives and that sort of thing. And he said, but you can't just like break it down all the time. Like, you have to like reorganize. And I said, but people do that. People are going to do that. You know, people are always making order and always making sense of things. So you don't really need to encourage people, I feel like, to do that, because I think we just all do that, at least neurotic people. You know, we're like constantly making things into these orders. So I think more we need to get out of these kinds of rigid structures and narratives rather than get into them, because we're going to get into them anyway.
Right, but can you imagine a structure that's not rigid, that's not that takes into account the non-existence of the big other, like that doesn't try to create a big other, that as all, you know what I'm saying, that has a kind of that wrestles with or is reconciled to its own contradiction? Can you imagine a structure that does that?
In what form?
I don't know. I just think I don't have an example. I just think like that would be the idea of like what the structure would have to be like. You know, that it would have to be this one in which the people that are excluded, or the people that don't belong, have almost more status than the people that belong. You know, so that in some way the structure is reconciled to what it can't do. That it accepts its own failure in a way. And I think that would have to be that would be the way that you would have to think of it. But I do feel the necessity of that, because I think, like just like you were talking about the state earlier, like I think if you don't have that, like today, the absence of structure means the victory of capital.
Right.
Like capital is all, it capitalizes on structures breaking down, right? So I do feel like you have to erect something as a barrier to capital's dominance.
That's very true. And something I have learned also from moving to Sweden is that I now understand what a government is supposed to do.
Right.
Which I literally didn't even really understand what governments were supposed to do before, because the government in America is just so messed up. But now I understand it's like this idea of like freedom in America is like, it means that there's no one to protect you. Like, so like corporations or people that are just like fraudulent just have like free reign because there's no like protections in place. And now I understand from Sweden, it's like say, like, for example, the food industry. Like, if you put a bunch of chemicals in your food that are known to cause cancer, like all these colorings and chemicals and stuff that you put in food in the States, it's like, you don't get to call that food and, like, sell it to people. So it's like, that's not food anymore. So it's like the government here, like, monitors, like, companies that would try to do something like that to make extra money or, like, cut costs. And they say, like, we're not going to sell that here. Like, now you have no market. So in order to be able to sell your things or, like, have your products, you have to have certain regulations in place. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. I think it's a great point that the part of what's happened in America is this destruction of the state apparatus by the interests of big capital, right? I think that's so that's great that you've been able to experience the contrast, because I think when you live here, you just think it's impossible, like it can never happen, like there's just no possibility for that.
Yeah, I thought all governments were corrupt, basically. Basically, that's what I judged. But that was like the nature of government, is that it's corrupt in some way. And now I understand, like, there's actually at least a couple few over here that are like really trying not to do that. They've really worked not to do that. And they're really, like, Stephen Reiser gave a talk once when Trump first got in office, called Crazy Like a Fox, and he pointed out, like, the things that should not be big businesses, like healthcare, education, military, and like policing. These things shouldn't be, like, incarceration. That shouldn't be a business. Right. Like, you put somebody in jail because they're dangerous, or like they're gonna hurt somebody or hurt themselves or something like that. But, like, you're not supposed to make money off of it.
Right. Absolutely. Right. The obscenity of that is just incredible, I think.
It really is. It's absurd and preposterous, and it's been like this for a very long time.
I know. I guess one of my hopes from this corona outbreak was that there'd be a return of shame about some of the terrible obscenities of especially of great wealth in the U.S. Like that, I forget what his name, David Geffen, I think, went out on his yacht right as the virus started to break out, and put a thing on Instagram: "I'm keeping safe on my yacht. Hopefully everyone else is keeping safe too." And he had to shut down his Instagram account because it got so much critique for this wealthy guy on a yacht saying that. And it's because people felt the shame that he didn't feel, right? And so I feel like that made me hopeful. And and I think there's a way in which we see all the things that people don't need. I mean, people are able to, a lot of people don't have enough to eat, and that's, during the virus, that's become exacerbated. But other people that are in Western world where they have enough, I think the idea of enough, we see how much enough is, and it's not all this other that people have thought that what they needed. And I think that this difference between, like, accumulate endlessly and I have enough, I kind of like that idea of, like, we have enough, we don't need any more.
Yeah, and I think if you have a government in place that's, like, being a good dad, and actually, like, giving some sort of a modicum of protection to make sure you're not, like, being abused or, like, taken advantage of by, like, any kind of corporate entity or anyone that can get a hold of you, then and then you have education for free. Or, like, here in Sweden, Even if you want to go to like Waldorf schooling or something like that, that's like typically private in the States, it's all covered here. Like even specialty
Wow.
schools like that are covered. It's amazing. So it's like
Yeah.
people know their health care is taken care of, and then they're all reasonably educated because they're all getting free education. Then they can pretty much take care of themselves unless like there's an accident or something, and then if there is, then they get some sort of assistance to help, with that. But like
Right.
you have a lot less problems when people have the basic healthcare and basic education.
Right. No, I know.
Fancy
I
that.
know.
Surprise.
Yeah.
And the other
Yeah.
thing they do is pay taxes. That's the saddest thing about America is like everyone thinks like, oh, but in Sweden you have to pay so many taxes. It's 30%. It's 30%. I paid more than that actually in New York. So it's like
Right.
it's 30%. And if all these huge corporations in America paid their 30% share, imagine how nice their roads would be. Everybody could have health care. It'd be
Right.
really nice. And it
Right.
wouldn't hurt them to pay 30%.
Right. No, it's true. I think you're right. Like the way that taxes are avoided by the people that have the most is just, I mean, that's sickening, right? And also the way, starting with Reagan, the way their rates were all brought down. So this has all happened in a very systematic way. Do you know this book by Thomas Piketty? He wrote just a new book called, I think it's called Capitalism and Ideology. It was published in France in I think end of last year, and now I just got translated into English. And it's pretty good on the way in which the combination. His idea is that it's two things. It's Reagan and Thatcher, the way they demonize the state, and I think this is absolutely right. His point is that the end of the Soviet Union opened up, like it made this one option. It just took it off the table, and so even though it wasn't a genuine option, it just made it seem like capitalism was the only game in town, and so that brought all these taxes came down, and then there was just all this unrestrained accumulation by the wealthy. And so he links those two events together, I think rightfully so, to say that's really the disaster, those two things coming together.
That makes sense. Yeah, and that's the thing with this whole problem. This has been percolating for a very long time. It's been like decades, if not centuries.
Right. No, it's
so,
true. Right.
Yeah, it's not a recent problem.
Right. It's exacerbated recently, but you're right. Not a recent problem.
Yeah. It's very much exacerbated. We've hit the tipping point. We have tipped. Now we live in some weird J.G. Ballard novel, apparently.
Right.
Thank you for listening to Rendering Unconscious. You've just heard a discussion with Professor Todd McGowan. For more, please visit vermont.academia.edu/Todd McGowan. That's TODDMCGOWAN. You may also visit my website, drvanessasinclair.net, and the podcast website, renderingunconscious.org. Rendering Unconscious is also a book. Rendering Unconscious, Psychoanalytic Perspectives, Politics, and Poetry. Available from Trapart Books, 2019. Please visit our publisher's website, www.trapart.net. You can support the podcast by visiting our Patreon, patreon.com/VANESSA23CARL. Your support is greatly appreciated. Links to everything can be found in the text accompanying this episode. And now, Consuming 6 from the album Sound 23 by myself and Douglas Lucas, available from chapart.net. Varying from person to person, but attempted to stave off the fragmentation, that to situation, or even from day to day. If one human being stated, she, language and its patterns produced in thee, went beyond the superficial. They concerned the classification. Viewers were outraged as they had never seen, consequently, the role played by art and how to relate to it. It was called un-American, and values, and although the Armory show included the most well-known of the images, were to be static and fixed. Jacques Villon Duchamp recollects that I always gave Salon of Independence like an invisible color, life that he had been working on in his final, himself simply tried to be, did and disrupt till the end. V was freedom, complete personal, and in which he achieved all three, was main stimulus. In 1911, we an enduring work of art, public domain, without the participation of its, sometime in 1913. Duchamp fashioned the final, completely aloof from the newly formed cubist. Duchamp, completely by chance, as he had de-idealist goals, held no interest for them at all. Clearly, R might. Yet, shortly before the opening, the society time, Duchamp later reflects that the theory of fountain, apparently the society of independent approach, however, he wanted to invent or film of art as one would have liked to believe. Once this interpreter of a theory from his position as director.